You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you ready to learn the 3 secrets to launching a successful podcast? Hi, I'm Bill, a recent client of the Podcast Mogul. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast but aren't sure where to begin, he's got you covered. He is hosting a free webinar where he will share the 3 secrets that can help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast without any fancy equipment or technical headaches. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot now and let him help get your podcast off the ground.
Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another amazing episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your enthusiastic host, Phil Better, the podcast mogul, and I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce our extraordinary guest today. Our guest is a true polymath, an entrepreneur, former airline captain, international author, business mentor, and of course, a philanthropist, not to mention a captivating public speaker. As if that wasn't impressive enough, they also hold the esteemed position of CEO at the award-winning Global Publishing Group, with a track record of running 3 highly successful businesses and the founding of 2 not-for-profit organizations. Our guest stands out as a business luminary, celebrated for their strategic acumen and marketing prowess. Their expertise extends across a diverse realm, making them a recognized authority on aviation, leadership, decision-making, and business turnaround. Beyond the boardroom, our guest is a visionary creator dedicating their spare time to crafting the most unique aviation museum in the country, a haven that has drawn visitors from every corner of the globe. What truly sets our guests apart is their commitment to empowering thousands worldwide through their unique strategies, systems, and cutting-edge publishing and marketing tools for wealth creation, not making you rich, but making you wealthy. Through seminars and workshops, their tireless work to educate and inspire others, leaving an indelible impact on the lives they touch. Without further ado, please welcome my guest, Andrew Carter. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. Once I heard about you, I knew I needed to get you on because you have a wealth of wisdom that I'm sure you're going to be able to share with my audience. And I can't thank you enough for showing up today.
Not at all. No, glad to be here and glad to share some tips that may help some others. I know what it's like trying to start this entrepreneurial journey, and it does seem overwhelming, but it's worth it, as you know. So happy to talk about that.
So with that starting off point, why did you start to become an entrepreneur? What was it that sparked the desire to be an entrepreneur?
That's a great question, because I think if you ask someone that who's done it, they can probably pinpoint a time and they'll state that that was what it was. But I think it's inherent within us. Obviously, there's different personality types. We have those who are extremely searching for risk, risk and adventure. And we have those who are completely risk adverse. And everyone else falls somewhere in between. So if you're completely risk adverse and, you're happy to work in a bank for 45, 50 years and retire and that's good enough for you, there's nothing wrong with that, but you will obviously never understand what we're here talking about on your podcast. For those of your listeners who are here, they probably already have something intrinsic within them. They just can't articulate it. And I had that from a very early age. I guess I was a bit different because my focus had always been on becoming a pilot. I was always interested in that. But in the background, I always had this sense of I was supposed to be doing something more. And so what will happen is a lot of entrepreneurs are people who get frustrated in their job, and it's not just with management, or it's not just with the boss, or it's not just with the 9 to 5 grind. There's something within them, and it's that adventure seeking, and it's that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's probably been with them for life. They've just never been aware of it, or they don't act on it until the situation becomes bad enough. And the reason I've worded it that way is I love to tell this story. I'm just going to take a little bit of your time here, Phil, if I could. But when I sold my first business, and this is almost 20 years ago now, I brought my father up, and I retired. I retired at age 37 after running a business for less than 3 years. And I said to my father, did you ever think that I would be this successful? And he just said, yes. And I burst out laughing because I'd struggled all my life at school. I'm not an academic. I came out of school in the height of the worst recession that we've had in our lifetimes. And I just, I couldn't get anywhere, couldn't do anything. Everything was a struggle for me. And I went and started this business. In fact, I was lucky enough to be flying, knew that wasn't eventually what I wanted to be doing. I had that sense, that urge, this frustration I'm talking about that people feel. And I happened to drive past a business expo that was on, and I stopped and I went in. I heard one guy talk. He only spoke for 10 minutes. And in that time, he said something revolutionary. He said, business is easy. Now, this is at a time when everyone's struggling and everyone else is saying business is hard. And so there was a lot of hate in this room. Everyone hated what this guy was saying, but it resonated with me because he qualified it. He said, business is easy. It's people that are difficult. And then he went on to explain just some very simple systems that make business easy. So I knew that was the way to go. I ended up signing up with him. He became my mentor, and that's how I succeeded. But the point I'm trying to make is I said to my father, you know what my life's been like. What made you think I'd be a success in business? And he refers to a time when I was age 9 and we climbed Ayers Rock. It's this amazing geological monstrosity, a big rock in the middle of Australia, right in the desert. And so we went there, and you're no longer allowed to climb it, but back in the day we could. And as a 9-year-old, I got to the top of this rock, and my father had a bottle of water and I had a bottle of water, and neither of us were thirsty, which is amazing, as I say, in the middle of the desert, having climbed to the top of this thing. So I took both bottles of water, and I'd heard people going past saying, oh, weren't they clever to bring water? And I went up and I sold the 2 bottles of water for, something like 10 times what they cost. And that funded me throughout the rest of that holiday in the red centre of Australia. Now, I'd never thought about that, okay? But my father said to me at this time at dinner, he said, that's when I knew you were going to succeed. I said, based on what? And he said, you automatically, as a kid, you've had no training in this, because remember, schools never prepare us to become entrepreneurs, right? Yeah, who's ever heard of that?
I would love for that to happen.
Like that would be my next big goal, and I'm trying to look at how to do that. I would love to see schools do that, but they're so set in this mindset, the way it's always been mindset that we'll talk about a lot over the next 30 minutes. It's going to be a very, very hard push, but there's got to be an awareness and awakening, and that's got to come about. But the point is, my father said to me, you've automatically identified a hungry market on top of that rock. He said you approached them without fear. He said, you created need, and then you priced accordingly, and you stood your ground, And he said, I know guys who've done 3 years, 4 years of university, business studies at university, who've never learnt that. He said, I've got friends who've been in business for decades who still haven't learnt that. He said, you instinctively did it as a 9-year-old. And he said, I knew then and there that you were going to be successful. Now, that blew my mind. But the point I'm trying to get at is I think we all, those of us who are listening to your podcast, we have had that in us for quite some time, just probably weren't aware of it.
I have to agree. A few episodes ago, I had another entrepreneur on, and I asked what made him, and he's like, I always wanted freedom. And I feel like even as a pilot, you wanted that freedom, because as a pilot, you get to fly everywhere, right? You're you're lucked out on the freedom. It's a safe job, but it still gives you the freedom. So I feel like just with what you were saying, you were looking for that freedom. You got not bored with the flying, but it wasn't giving you the freedom you were seeking as being an entrepreneur. And I love seeing that. One of the joys of being this host, I get to see these stories interconnect and see how every entrepreneur, who could be different, is very similar at the core. And I love to see that.
Well, I'll just stop you there because that's the important part for your listeners right now. We are. Those of you who are listening who haven't done anything and thinking it's beyond them, no, Phil, you've just hit the nail on the head. We are all the same. It's just some of us have been at that stage where we've taken the action, but intrinsically, at heart, you're quite correct, mate. We are all the same. Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, we are all the same. With, I just lost my question. I hate when that happens. So I'll go to one of the ones I have prepared here. Here we go. Your journey from airline captain to entrepreneur, business mentor, and international author is truly remarkable. How did your background in aviation shape your approach to entrepreneurship, and what lessons from the cockpit do you find most applicable to business leadership?
Great question. And I've never had anyone frame anything quite like that before. So that's really well done. And that's actually a good question to answer because it does cover some of the most important things. So let me just go on a quick aside. Let's talk about the two types of people who get in business. You're dealing with entrepreneurs, and that's who we're trying to talk to today. So let's understand that that is a specific subset, and that's who we're trying to address. The other people I see get into business are ones who sit there and think, my boss is an idiot. I could go and do this better and I could work for myself. I wouldn't be working as hard and I'd make a lot more money. Those people usually fail, all right? If you don't have the proper entrepreneurial spirit and you're not approaching it the correct way, which I'm going to talk about today, then you are going to fail. So the things that I've took from the airline environment or just from flying in general, obviously self-discipline is paramount. We can't do with what we're going to do without having incredible amount of self-discipline. And that means being able to sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice some time, or you're going to have to sacrifice possibly even relationships. You're definitely going to sacrifice initially financially, but knowing the end result is going to be worth it. And that's definitely a requirement for entrepreneurs. You are taking a risk, but here's the thing, as a pilot, we always take risks. People don't like to hear that, especially in the airline world, but we always mitigate it. So we're always looking at what is the absolute worst thing that can happen on this flight. We are then planning for that worst case scenario, and then nothing can be worse than what we've planned for. Therefore, we can't get caught out. So I took that exact same approach to starting my business. I already sat there and worked out what's my exit strategy. So before I'd even come up with a business name, I'd already worked out how I was going to exit the business when I was successful, and more importantly, how I would exit the business if it wasn't successful, and what metrics I was going to use to determine when and how it wasn't successful. So I'd already had that plan made. I was already prepared to risk money and time to get this done, but I had that self-discipline and that planning, and I'd done the research that ended up making it the success that it was. So that's probably the easiest way to explain the transfer of skills in that scenario.
I love it. And being an airline pilot obviously has influenced a lot of your life because it gives you, obviously, like you said, you mentioned the self-discipline. What was it like starting a publishing company? Because that's vastly different from flying an airline, having an airline museum or an aviation museum, and now you got a publishing group. Like, what was where's the correlation? How did that happen?
Yeah, great question again. Those two aren't directly related. So I suppose we need to, let's go back to the start of the story again. So as I said to you, I left flying because I met this mentor. After studying under that mentor, I thought, well, I can make this work. So I actually started my first business, which I'm usually reluctant to say what the business is, because when people hear it, they go, oh, that's not the same industry as me. What he's talking about won't apply to my people. It does. You're dealing with people. So everything I'm going to tell you applies across all industries, because unless your industry doesn't deal with people, then these things work, okay? And if you're not dealing with people, how are you making money? So the business was importing and wholesaling radio control model aircraft. Now, was that a stupid thing to do? Because the market saturated with it. At the time, the internet was really starting to get its feet and you could sell this stuff online. Andrew, that's a stupid business to go into. Well, no, because the things I want to talk about today are how to do your research, how to do things differently to others, and we'll come back to the publishing bit in a bit, and how to position yourself as an authority. Those three things are really important. So what I did as a sole trader, working from my backyard, I actually did the opposite to what the market was doing. And I can't stress this enough for every entrepreneur listening today. The figures might be slightly different in your country, but in Australia, seriously, there's about 6 to 6.5% of all businesses are doing everything correctly. I want you to think about that. Do the reverse. That means 94% of all businesses in this country are doing it wrong. Now, most people starting a business will model themselves off other businesses out there. They'll do the same practices, the same advertising, and they'll price the same way. If you know that 94% of them are doing it wrong, why would you model off someone doing it wrong? So when in doubt, if you don't know what else to do, just do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, and at least you will stand out, if nothing else. And today, that's the hardest part, getting to stand out. So what I did is I looked at all the cheap rubbish that was available in the particular niche. And that's the other part, niching down. You don't want to be selling everything to everybody. You want to get the tightest niche possible. So I concentrated on a very, very specific area of radio control models. It was something I knew very well. I knew it was a growing area in the market, but I also knew I could steal part of the market that was out there. So that was a double whammy, if you like. And what I did is I looked at the rubbish that was out there and I went the other way. I thought people getting into this hobby, especially parents who are trying to get their kids into it, they don't want a cheap toy. Cheap is scary. Cheap means you've normally got to go buy twice, okay? So I went and got the highest quality product I could get. I went and got one that looked like an exact model, that exact aeroplane that you could see at any airfield around the country. I went and packaged it up with absolutely everything in it, because there's nothing worse than buying something and then realize you're needing batteries and you need glue and I actually went and packaged it with its own flight simulator. I created a flight simulator of that exact aircraft to teach people to fly before they took the actual package into the air. Now, what does that mean? It means that my package cost 57% more than my nearest competitor. My nearest competitor was the biggest in the Australasia region. They were a massive conglomerate, right? Now, everyone else was trying to undercut them. That's what everyone else thought would be the way to go. But if you're trying to undercut people, the quality's going to suffer. I went the other way, and I became number 2 in the country within 6 months. So I was number 2 to the biggest conglomerate, but I was still beating out other major corporations in the country. No one could compete with what I was doing, because people will pay for quality, okay? So that's how I did it, and I became very successful. I already started with the end in mind, as I explained to you, so I knew what price I wanted to sell the business at, so I knew what price it had to be, what money it needed to be generating each month. I looked at what I was generating, and I decided I need to double that and then double it again, and I set about doing that, and the marketing strategies I used to do that were incredibly successful. So I ended up, once I sold my business, people were approaching me saying, how did you become so successful? I started having to tell people the same stories over and over again. So I thought it would be easier to write a book. So a mate of mine had trouble getting his businesses started in Australia. He was trying to get a franchise going here, actually Mars Venus with Dr. John Gray. So they were trying to get that established in Australia. And the problem was, traditional publishing wouldn't let us do what we wanted to do. We were effectively using the book as a marketing tool. So we wanted to educate people, but get people to take action and buy more from us, either come onto a coaching program with us or buy into a franchise or do whatever else. As a result of that, we tried to look at self-publishing, but self-publishing's got so many limitations, and you can't get distribution as a self-published author, so you can't get it into bookstores nationwide or even internationally. So we ended up starting our own company, our own publishing company, and he was able to do the books he wanted to, and I did my book the way I wanted to, and that's basically exactly how it got started. It was more a means to an end. It was the way of taking the best of traditional publishing and the best of self-publishing, get rid of all the negatives associated with it, combine them together, and be able to do what we wanted to. Because that was so successful, and because there was no other entrepreneurial publisher in Australia at that time, this was the crux. This was the thing that people were desperate for. Once you're an author, you actually positioned yourself as the authority, all right? And so, I mean, author makes up most of the word of authority. The two go hand in hand. So it's a really important strategy. And again, it's a matter of turning the publishing world on its head. You look at what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. Unfortunately, I come across too many people today, too many entrepreneurs who bought into a program or tried to do a book, and they tell me it's not successful. Well, no, it's not the way you did it. I mean, there's only us, and I know of one company in the States that do it this way. Everyone else is trying to copy us and trying to get some of the aspects correct, but they just don't have the secret sauce. They don't have all of the elements in place to make and position somebody as the authority and have this back end, make more money from the book on the front end and the back end. We actually make tens of thousands of dollars for our authors before a book is even printed, yet alone a lot more afterwards. So it's a long-winded way, but yeah, it wasn't like I just went out and started a publishing story. But yeah, that's how entrepreneurial publishing came about in Australia, and I ended up buying the company off my mate that effectively started it. Yeah,
That's incredible, and but you went out and solved a problem that
correct. Yeah,
that other people weren't willing to solve, and not only did it turn out to be a great idea, it was a very lucrative one as well, and allowed you to take to the next level and help so many other authors.
and that's the important bit. Again, when you're talking about, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, I know I need to do something, but I don't know what I need to do. Don't focus on the money. Phil, you've just hit the nail on the head. Focus on how to help others. As soon as you can solve other people's problems, you will be surprised the money that will start flowing your way. People are willing to pay for a solution to a problem. In the same way with the models, they are willing to pay for a premium high-end product. People will pay for anyone that can help them, seriously help them. There's too many scam artists and stuff out there. Position yourself effectively and help others, and you will become rich. That's just the nature of it.
I love it, and it's a simple. Another thing that a previous guest said, it's just simplifying your success. It's just find the basic MVP, in essence, your minimum viable product, and you'll have the success that you're looking for. I want to know if someone is starting, because we are focusing on people looking to start their own publishing career, be it a writer or their own publishing house like they started with you. What's one piece of advice you would suggest to those individuals right here, right now, listening?
Yep. I already mentioned it before, but I'd say again, research is everything. Research exactly which part of the market you want to go into. So if you're just looking at becoming an entrepreneur, do you need a book? Yes, you definitely do. You actually need a book to position yourself. And the other complainer goes, oh, well, Andrew, but my business is completely online. A book's no good to me unless it's an ebook. Wrong again, okay? The majority of sales throughout all of North America, Australia, probably the same for Europe. I don't have the figures, but it's about 86 to 88% of all books being read are physical books. And on top of that, since 2011, worldwide, the physical book sales have increased year on year, all right? People are buying and reading more books now than ever before. So ebooks and audiobooks still make up the smallest part of the market. And remember this, you live offline. All of us live offline. You go to the toilet offline, you eat offline, you drive offline, you go to work usually offline. So we live in the offline world, even though we spend a lot of time online. You want to be able to market to and attract people's attention offline and drive them to your website, to your online business. And I'm telling you now, a book done the correct way is the single most powerful marketing tool and positioning tool you can use to do that. So if you're looking to start a business, think about how you're going to stand out from everybody else and create a book that says something different to what everybody else is saying and use that as your positioning tool. Now, if you're getting into business, the first and most important thing is research, 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 research. Look at what everyone else is doing. Identify the best parts of that and the worst parts of that. How can you do the best parts better or differently? And how can you turn the worst parts around? And any of that will make you stand out from the rest of your competition. So but research is the most important part. If you're not researching and understanding what you're getting into first, if you're just going to do the same as everybody else, how do you stand out from your competition? And what stops someone else coming in and doing it better than you, or worse, undercutting you on price? Once you can differentiate yourself, your product, your service, and everything else, once you position yourself as the expert, you can actually charge a lot more. So you're going to have to also value add. You're going to have to provide a lot more value in the same way I did with that model aircraft. But once you can position yourself as the authority, once you're doing things differently to everyone else, you can charge a lot more, and you will actually get more people coming to you.
It's very true, because you're now an authority with the people, and you're only working with people who can pay, and those people already have that authority. So it pushes on. You get the bit of that rub off authority slowly over time, and then you become, the global publishing group CEO. Big time.
Correct. And then you get lucky enough to have people like Phil approach you to do podcasts with them, and which establishes your authority. And then I'm now reaching a whole new audience, which now establishes more authority. So yeah, it becomes self-fulfilling. And also, if I could just touch on that point, a lot of people get upset about that, like entrepreneurs, they just think that you're out to rip everyone off and make yourself rich. It's not like that at all. So you hit the point, the nail on the head. Once you've positioned yourself like this, you are now attracting people who can afford to pay more. Not only can they afford to, they're actively willing to do it because they want to be working with the authority. What that means is you now have the ability to do pro bono work, or in my case, to have gone and started not-for-profit organisations. All the successful entrepreneurs I see have done some sort of philanthropic, I can not even say the word, I just is one, philanthropic work. And this is how you do it. But you've got to be able to take care of yourself first, and positioning yourself as the authority and making more money is what allows you to give and help others.
Well, on that note, I actually have a question regarding your two non-for-profit. So we've heard about you running your successful businesses and funding two not-for-profit. How did you decide on what you wanted to create with those nonprofits? And how do they connect to entrepreneur? Like, is there a similar way of running a nonprofit as a business?
Definitely. Yeah, well done. So the only successful not-for-profit has to be run as a business. There's no two ways about it. And everything you've done to be successful in business, those skills transfer directly into a successful not-for-profit. And so again, it comes down to, as I said, number one thing is research. So I was lucky enough in that we'd been approached by someone from a village in another country. They had issues there. There was all sorts of lifestyle issues, but they had people who were doing businesses there, but just not doing them very, very well. So I happened to travel there, spend time in the village, see what was going on and what was needed, find out what the problem was with these business owners. In most cases, it was just education. So I was able to spend time educating them, and then came home and very quickly raised enough money to start getting things going over there to be able to microfinance these businesses so that those people within the village could become self-sufficient, and then in turn help the village. So two things happened. One, I can compress all the marketing ideas and skills you need into just 5 key points, and I can teach those 5 key points from the stage. And I did that by selling a pair of pants. I literally took my jeans off on stage and I sold them on stage for something like $10,600. Okay. So that was, that's probably another podcast in itself.
That's the after hours invest in yourself podcast.
Yeah. It's called How to Get Into My Pants. But anyway, so what with that money, we were then able to start this whole concept. We were able to start this microfinance. And what happens is once you do these things, see, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on your podcast, Phil, but it's a term we use in Australia quite regularly. Most people have a pretty good bullshit radar, okay? We can detect BS from a mile away. Now, we don't always get it right. Most of us have got stung once, but we won't get stung the second time. And so when you're successful and when you're congruent, when you're saying and doing the right things and people can see that and you're very genuine, that becomes a magnet. People are attracted to you. And so once I started this, once we had the money to give to the village and once we started the education in the village, other people said, well, how can we help? Well, They need clothes, they need white goods, they need canned food, they need all these sort of things. So someone else then volunteered a 20-foot container, a 40-foot container it was. Someone else volunteered a truck to drive it. And they drove all the way down the East Coast, and going out through different people's mailing list, we were able to tell people what we were doing. And people would turn up at each of these stops along the way and give washing machines or, fridges and clothes, toys, canned goods, all this sort of stuff. And then the rest of the money that we raised, we were able then to ship that to the village. So that was how that one got started. It's more serendipitous, I suppose. People, once you get to that stage in your life, once you are ready, opportunities come. And I don't know whether that's the universe or the secret or God or whatever that is. I don't understand it. I've never looked into it. I just see it happen again and again and again for other people.
I love that. And I love how, like you said, it was serendipitous of someone saying, I got a container, I can pay a trucker, and then using mailing lists, which is something so important to both entrepreneurs and, businesses, been able to fill up that container that ended up helping tremendously the lives and the future generations in this village.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's very satisfying. And so that was how that one started. I mean, even now, so I'm not flying professionally anymore, but another company has started up, and they actually transport sick children and their families from the outback regions. As you understand, Australia's big and fairly remote, except for the East Coast. So all of our medical centres are on the East Coast, and a lot of these towns don't have the specialist medical for a lot of these kids in particular. And some of the kids are immunocompromised, so they can't sit in a car for 6 hours and stop at public restrooms and use them on their way to a hospital. And parents haven't got the time to take a whole day or two out just to get their kid to a hospital for a checkup or something. So I've started volunteering for this other organisation called Little Wings, who's done this amazing work. And so I can use my skills from my past, flying light aircraft, but flying these kids who can't sit in the car for 6 hours. I can get them in within an hour, hour and a half. I can get them to see the medical people they need to, and then fly them back out in the same day. So you can give of your time as well like that. Once you get successful, but as I say, you need to put the time and effort into making yourself successful first, and then removing yourself from the business so that you can go on and do these things for others.
I love it. And it's great advice. And I'm looking forward to the moment when I'm able to remove myself fully from my business and be able to give back to the community for helping me grow as much as I have. We are coming to the end, which I hate, Andrew, because I'm having such a great time talking with you. But I do have one last question. It is a selfish one. As some of my audience knows, I'm writing a book of advice for my nephew when he turns 11. So
Okay.
10, when he turns 10, not 11.
Yeah.
But Andrew, I have 10-year-old you right here beside me. What is one piece of advice you want to tell your 10-year-old self?
Yeah, okay. It's probably two pieces, but combined together they make the one. It's trust in yourself and accept that failure is a great way to learn. So I don't think, as a kid, obviously failure never concerned me, but this is my problem with school and why I probably didn't do very well in it. We get educated as we grow up. It's a very, very bad thing. And so somewhere very early on in the grade 1 or 2, you start learning that mistakes are a bad thing. Mistakes are something you get punished for or penalized for. And, parents speak to you if you fail exams or you don't do very well, if you've made too many mistakes. And so I became indoctrinated in that way. Whereas as an entrepreneur, mistakes are your best friend. Have a look at Elon Musk. He's failed more than anyone else in the world, but that's only because he tries more than anyone else in the world. Fail fast, fail often. If you can, fail cheap. But the point is, learn. You will learn so much from that. And so you've got to learn to trust yourself, trust your intuition. It's going to develop over time. But it'll only develop correctly if you learn to accept mistakes. You will make them regardless. You're a human being. That is your natural default, making mistakes. But that is the way you learn. You learn to walk that way. You learn to drive that way. Everything you've ever learned in life was done by making multiple mistakes and learning from it. Why is it okay to accept that in one part of your life, but not in every other aspect of your life? Accept it now and enjoy and embrace that and grow as a result.
That is some great advice. This is my secretly, it's the best part of my interviews because I get these things that I wish my 10-year-old self knew, and I'm learning now. And it's like, yeah, accept the mistakes. Mistakes are part of life, and it's the only way we grow as people. The amount of mistakes I've made on podcasts, my Lord, I don't even want to get into it. But Andrew, I want to jump off stage. I'm going to let you have the last little bit. Please let my audience know where they can connect with you if they're looking for help publishing their next book or whatever it is, following you to be a mentor. The floor, sir, is yours.
Thank you so much. No, appreciate it. Appreciate being here. To anyone who's considering the entrepreneurial journey, do the research. There's no rush, but know that you can do this. There's always help out there, and you've got to look for the right people to help you at the right time. Those of you want to know more about my business and how we run it, it's globalpublishinggroup.com.au. You can reach me through there. You can find out a bit more about what we do, and we are going to be looking probably mid next year. We are going to start doing some online training, so those remotely will be able to access it that way as well. But please feel free to reach out. I cannot stress enough, a book is the single greatest marketing tool you will come if it's done correctly. And I only know of 2 companies that can do it 100% correctly. We're certainly happy to provide a webinar or something to give you more education on that if you'd like. So Phil, thank you very much once again for the opportunity. Greatly appreciated.
Andrew, the pleasure is completely mine. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise over your career and the 3 amazing companies you've grown.
Thank you so much, and all the very best to all the listeners. I hope to hear their stories on your podcast at some time in the future.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. To my audience, again, remember to check out the show notes down below to connect with Andrew and the publishing group, the Global Publishing Group, excuse me. And remember to always invest in yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. Now it's time to take the next step. When you're ready to dive deeper into how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast, Phil's got something special for you. Join him for a free webinar where he'll reveal the 3 secrets that have helped countless entrepreneurs succeed in podcasting. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot, and let's turn your podcasting dreams into reality.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.